Hello and welcome back. I'm Dr. Insomnia, and tonight we're diving into the kind of stories that crawl beneath your skin. You've heard the rumors, the urban legends people swear aren't real. But what if they are? What if the strange figure in the woods, the ghost in the attic, or the vanishing hitchhiker actually left behind evidence? Some tales are easy to dismiss. Others leave a paper trail soaked in fear. So lock your doors, dim the lights, and get comfortable. Because these are the urban legends rooted in truth. And once you hear them, you might never sleep the same again. In the shadows of Fairfax County, Virginia, beneath the overhanging limbs of ancient trees, and deep within the quiet rural roads, lies one of America's strangest and most persistent urban legends. The tale of the Bunny Man. This eerie story, whispered across generations, blends escaped convicts, unexplained sightings, and mutilated remains into one of the most enduring folklore horrors in the United States. The legend begins in the early 1900s when a mental asylum near Clifton, Virginia, was allegedly shut down due to increasing pressure from local residents. The inmates, deemed unfit for society, were reportedly loaded into buses and transported to a new facility. But on the way, one of the buses crashed, allowing several of the prisoners to escape into the dense woods surrounding the area. The police quickly recaptured all but two of the escaped convicts. After a prolonged search, one of the fugitives was found, dead, hanging from a nearby tree. According to accounts, his body was discovered with a makeshift noose around his neck, and in a gruesome twist, the officers found dozens of skinned, half-eaten rabbits strewn around the scene. The second man was never captured, and that's when the rumors began. Locals started calling the missing convict the Bunny Man, due to the eerie trail of rabbit carcasses that appeared periodically in the woods and under bridges near Clifton. Soon the legend evolved beyond animal mutilation. Teenagers reported seeing a man in a white bunny costume stalking the woods late at night. In the 1970s, police records documented several reports of a man dressed in a rabbit suit threatening people with an axe near the now infamous Colchester Overpass, a secluded one-lane bridge that quickly became known as the Bunny Man Bridge. According to one of the most well-known accounts from 1970, a couple was parked near the overpass late one evening when they noticed something move in the darkness. Moments later, a figure dressed in white appeared from the shadows and hurled a hatchet through their car window. Though they weren't harmed, the couple's story was echoed by several others in the following weeks, each claiming to have seen or encountered a man in a bunny costume wielding a weapon. As the legend grew, so did the tales. Some say the Bunny Man is the vengeful ghost of the escaped convict, forever cursed to wander the woods where he died. Others believe he is a deranged hermit who took on the persona of a rabbit to scare away intruders from his land. A few more grounded theories suggest the stories were born from local pranksters or even misidentified wildlife encounters. Regardless, the fear surrounding the Bunny Man Bridge became so intense that police eventually closed the area on Halloween nights due to the number of curious thrill seekers attempting to summon the Bunny Man or catch a glimpse of him. Today, the Colchester Overpass remains a point of fascination. Graffiti marks the concrete and warning signs deter loiterers, but the legend persists. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, people continue to claim strange sightings in the woods, odd sounds in the dead of night, and the lingering presence of something that shouldn't be there. The Bunny Man has transformed from a cautionary tale into a symbol of eerie Americana, an urban legend that, true or not, reflects something deeper. It's a story of isolation, fear, and the unknown. Whether born from fact or fiction, the Bunny Man still haunts the forests of Virginia, waiting, at least in imagination, for the next traveler foolish enough to cross his bridge after dark. In the world of modern folklore, few figures carry the same eerie weight as the Smiling Man. First whispered about in niche forums and late-night paranormal threads, the legend has grown into something that chills the spine of even the most hardened skeptics. The tales don't follow the traditional mold of ghost stories or cryptid sightings. What makes the smiling man so terrifying is that he seems human, but not quite. Eyewitness accounts almost always agree on a few critical details. He is tall, abnormally so, and gaunt, his limbs too long, his posture too slack, as if gravity itself is unsure what to make of him. He wears a suit, often described as a bit outdated, and he walks or sometimes dances along empty city streets in the dead of night. But most striking of all is his face, pale, stretched thin, and frozen in an impossibly wide grin, one that doesn't move even when he speaks. The most infamous sighting came in 2012, when a Reddit user shared a personal encounter late one night in a sleepy neighborhood. The post recounted how the author, walking home from a corner store, spotted the smiling man a block ahead. The man didn't speak. He merely watched, smiling, before he began to follow. At first, his movements were odd, meandering and slow, like someone imitating a puppet. But then the dancing started. According to the story, the man moved like a marionette with broken strings, twisting and twirling down the sidewalk as if listening to music only he could hear. But every step brought him closer. The storyteller quickened their pace. The smiling man matched it. Eventually, he broke into a full sprint, without changing the expression on his face. The narrator ran, not looking back. When they finally reached their apartment and locked the door, they dared one glance through the peephole. The street was empty, but they didn't sleep that night. What makes this figure even more terrifying is that his appearances are not isolated. Dozens of posts across various forums describe similar incidents: strange dancing, wide smiles, erratic nighttime behavior. In one case, a woman described seeing the smiling man standing under a flickering streetlight, waving at her without blinking. In another, a man claimed the entity followed him for 3 city blocks before simply vanishing mid-step. Speculation runs wild. Some suggest he is a specter of the urban subconscious, a ghost born from isolation and late-night dread. Others argue he might be an interdimensional being, slipping through cracks in our reality. Skeptics claim he's nothing more than a shared psychological manifestation, a modern myth molded by internet culture.
But for those who've seen him, there's no debate. Something is out there. The smiling man has infiltrated pop culture in subtle ways. Short films on YouTube reenact his most famous sightings. Artists sketch renditions of his gangly form, frozen grin, and dancing shadow. Paranormal podcasts dissect each sighting with obsessive detail. But no one, not even the most seasoned researchers, has ever caught him on film. Not clearly. Not without that smile blurring the footage. There is something profoundly disturbing about a man who appears in familiar places, your street, your city, and does nothing but stare and smile. He doesn't speak, he doesn't chase, he simply dances closer, step by eerie step. And perhaps that's what makes the smiling man so deeply terrifying. He does not want to hurt you. He wants to unsettle you. He wants to be remembered. So next time you're walking home late at night and you feel the weight of unseen eyes, don't turn around. And if you hear footsteps behind you, slow and deliberate, or the sound of shoes scraping pavement in rhythm, don't stop. Don't make eye contact. Because if you do, and you see him, you'll never forget that smile.
If you work long enough in fringe investigation, you start to notice certain patterns. It begins with whispers, stories shared in internet forums, drunken bar conversations, or late-night radio shows. Most of them fade with time, but some persist. The black-eyed children phenomenon is one of those. It first surfaced in the 1990s, but detailed reports span decades prior. In each case, the story begins with a knock, a soft one, hesitant, timed perfectly to coincide with the dead of night. When the homeowner or driver opens the door, they're greeted by two children, usually between 10 and 13 years old, dressed oddly, sometimes in outdated jackets, sometimes in summer clothes during a snowstorm. The children always ask the same thing: "Can we come in?" Or, in the case of vehicular encounters, "Can we get a ride?" Their voices are flat, measured. There's no emotion in them, only mimicry. And their eyes are pure black. No iris, no sclera. Just empty, depthless voids. In one of the most documented cases, a rural homeowner in Oregon reported a pair of children knocking at her door during a thunderstorm. They stood perfectly still, soaking wet, their expressions neutral. When she cracked the door, one of them said, "We need to use your phone. Please, let us in." She described an immediate and visceral dread, as though every fiber in her body screamed that something was terribly wrong. Despite their calm appearance, the children's presence felt oppressive, almost parasitic. When she refused entry and closed the door, they remained for several minutes, silently staring into the peephole. These reports often end the same way. The children leave after being denied, but those who encounter them describe lingering effects: headaches, nightmares, animals behaving aggressively, electronics malfunctioning, and in rarer cases, weeks of misfortune or illness. Psychologists have attempted to label these encounters as sleep paralysis hallucinations or manifestations of social anxiety, but that fails to explain the consistency across reports. The same phrases, the same mannerisms, the same eyes. Folklorists point to centuries-old legends of creatures that mimic human children to gain access to sacred or personal spaces. From the fae of Celtic myths to vampire lore requiring permission to enter, there's historical precedent for these motifs. In Navajo culture, stories speak of shape-shifting spirits who borrow the form of youth to lure the vulnerable. Even stranger, some researchers suggest a connection to modern UFO abduction phenomena. The children's flat affect, telepathic undertones in their speech, and the strange aura surrounding them have led some to believe they are hybrids. A biological experiment perhaps, or something not fully bound by our dimension. No clear photograph of the black-eyed children exists. In every case, when attempts were made to record or capture them, equipment failed. Blurry images, drained batteries, corrupted audio. It's as though their presence interferes with more than just the physical. They distort reality itself. One unconfirmed report out of Colorado involves a park ranger who encountered a pair of black-eyed children sitting quietly on a hiking trail. They didn't speak. They didn't move. He turned around and radioed for help, and when he looked back, they were gone. He resigned the next week. Whether demonic, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or simply a modern myth, the black-eyed children phenomenon refuses to be neatly categorized. The fear they instill is not just about their eyes or their words. It's the unnatural calm, the unrelenting politeness, the silent insistence that they must be allowed in. And perhaps that's the most disturbing part, because all they need is your permission. One word, one act of misplaced compassion, and they'll be inside. So, if you ever hear a knock just past midnight and see two small figures beneath the porch light, think twice before answering. Because once they're in, they don't always leave. Among the whispered legends of New York's forgotten corners, none casts a longer, darker shadow than the myth of Cropsey, a name that once echoed through playground dares, late-night sleepovers, and the uneasy silence of abandoned hospitals. On Staten Island, Cropsey wasn't just a ghost story. He was real, or at least real enough to change lives forever. For decades, children were warned, stay away from the woods, don't wander too far from home, and never, ever go near the old Willowbrook State School. Cropsey, they were told, lived in the ruins. He was the escaped mental patient with a hook for a hand, the boogeyman who snatched kids who broke curfew. A myth built for terror, fueled by fear. But what made Cropsey different from other urban legends was this. In the 1980s, the legend bled into reality. The Willowbrook State School had closed in disgrace just years before. What was once a sprawling institution for developmentally disabled children had become a national scandal, exposed for its horrific abuse, neglect, and overcrowding. Geraldo Rivera's infamous expose in 1972 showed the world the filth and suffering inside those walls. When the doors finally shut, the buildings stood abandoned, their halls echoing with unspeakable history. But some said it never truly emptied. In 1987, a 12-year-old girl named Jennifer Schweiger went missing. She had Down syndrome. Her disappearance shook Staten Island. Police, volunteers, and neighbors searched day after day. That search led them to the woods near Willowbrook, and eventually to a shallow grave. Jennifer's body was found buried near the school's grounds, and not long after, authorities arrested a man who had haunted those woods for years, Andre Rand. Rand had once worked as a custodian at Willowbrook. Since its closure, he had been living in the nearby tunnels and forest, surviving off scraps and hiding in plain sight. Rumors swirled that he wasn't just a drifter, but the real-life Cropsey. Investigators began to link him to other disappearances stretching back over a decade, children who vanished without a trace. While only one murder charge stuck, the fear had already metastasized. The community saw what they feared most, a monster hiding behind the myth. What made the legend of Cropsey so enduring was this fusion of fiction and fact. He wasn't just a shadow in the closet, or a ghost on the highway. He was a man who lived among them. A man who had access to the places children were told never to go. The tunnels beneath Willowbrook became synonymous with evil. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind through the trees seemed to whisper his name. But even after Rand was imprisoned, the legend didn't die. Instead, it morphed. People still report strange sightings near the ruins. Flashlights flickering in the distance. Figures vanishing behind broken walls. New stories sprout from the old, like weeds in concrete. Paranormal investigators, urban explorers, and thrill seekers flock to the remains of Willowbrook, drawn by the promise of darkness and truth. Cropsey remains a symbol, a warning about what happens when society looks away, when institutions rot from the inside, and when the line between myth and reality fades to black. In many ways, the real horror wasn't the man himself, but the system that let him disappear into the margins. So if you ever find yourself on Staten Island, near the old Willowbrook grounds, and you hear something move in the brush, don't call out. Don't look too closely, because some legends don't die. They wait. Thanks for sticking around, Night Dwellers. If these stories chilled your spine or made you question what's lurking just outside your window, then hit that like button, subscribe, and join the growing circle of the sleepless. I've got more tales waiting in the dark, and tell me in the comments which legend kept you up tonight. Until next time, sleep light. I'm Dr. Insomnia.